If you want your videos to look cinematic at 24 frames per sec, we want to have our shutter speed at 1/50th of a second for that cinematic motion blur. And then don't forget about that shallow depth of field. We're going to have to put our aperture at f1.2, f1.8, heck, even f2.8 or f4 if we need to. With these settings, on a bright sunny day, your image is gonna be whiter than a cold winter's day. Yeah, we need something for this, and it's probably this ND filter. Let me tell you how it's used and give you a better idea if this is actually for you. If you've ever gone to the eye doctor and had them dilate your eyes with special eye drops, you may recall that you left the office with some style of sunglasses. In a similar way, as you open your camera sensor to much light due to a wide open aperture and a slow shutter speed for the sake of bokeh or shallow depth of field, you're gonna need something in front of your camera lens to expose your image properly. This is the neutral density filter, or ND filter. It's pretty much sunglasses for your camera lens. This specifically is a variable neutral density filter, which allows you to make your filter or your image go from dark to even darker, depending on what you're going for. But Mike, I don't need an ND filter. We can just stop down our aperture for better exposure. That's true. You could do that if you want to prioritize your motion blur. Or if you want to prioritize your blurry background or your shallow depth of field, you could just leave your aperture alone and crank up the shutter speed. To be honest, it's all preference. If I'm outside and I don't have an ND filter for shooting video, I'll just crank up my shutter if I'm shooting 60 frames a second or higher, and just slow down the footage if I could. I mean, if it's needed. If I'm sticking to 24 frames per second, I'll crank up my aperture instead for a less jittery look. Let me show you how I use my ND filter for video. Here in this video portrait, I want that cinematic look of 24 frames per second. And because I'm applying the 180-degree rule, my shutter speed will be 1/50th of a second. I also want a shallow depth of field, so I want to open up my aperture and it will be at f1.8. Then my ISO will be set to the minimum, and here we have the settings that I need to achieve the look I want. It just still looks like winter is here. So because the image is unusable unless it's exposed better, I'll apply a variable ND filter to my lens. We'll start with the 2 to 5 stop ND filter. Okay, it looks like that'll do. If the 2-stop VND filter didn't work out, then I would have switched over to the 6 to 9 ND filter. Most of the time, I'm using 2 to 5 stops VND for mornings and sometimes late afternoon. I'll use the 6 to 9 stop VND for sunnier times of the day, like around 11 a.m. to 4 p.m. depending on the time of the year here in the East Coast. By the way, let me know, how do you deal with overexposed parts of your image? Do you crank your shutter, aperture, or just deal with it? Alright, VND filters can be pretty helpful tools, but who is it really for? This is basically for anyone who's just shooting outside and wants to get the most detail out of their image, out of their environment, without having to flashbang their camera sensor. Video shooters, without a doubt, get one. Especially now that different companies are producing the 2-piece VND filters, like the 2 to 5 and 6 to 9 stop filters. You don't have to spend $250 for Peter McKinnon's VND filters if you don't want to. You can get ones from companies like Moment or Freewell for a more affordable price. Whoever you buy from, I highly recommend buying variable ND filters over single stop ND filters for people who run and gun. It's just easier to change on the fly. In addition, if you do get a variable ND filter, make sure to get the ones with different stops like mine, 2 to 5 and 6 to 9, as this prevents any vignetting on the side of your image. If you want to see how ND filters can make your waterfalls look dreamy like this, I've got a video for you right over here. Thank you guys so much again for watching. Now go out there and shoot for the life that matters. See ya!